So what your heart wishes for is always the truth and always what you'll get. So sometimes it's like, and it goes back to that idea of like attachment to outcomes, because we think this is what I'll feel when I get this thing, or this is the version of self I'll be when I get this thing. So say your heart is asking for, I don't know, like freedom maybe. And so we think I have to make this level of money to get freedom. Or then our mind says, okay, I hear you, heart. We want freedom. Let me attach a story, which is the only way that I'm going to start to look to get it. And that's where we lose connection with flow and the path and where our intuition is leading us. And that's where the ego starts to take over to try to meet that need.
Hello, and thank you for calling the Higher Self Hotline, your direct line to the divine. You've been led here by your inner knowing, and you've arrived right on cue. I'm your host, Zoey Greco, and together we'll make the ethereal earthly, helping you consciously embody your spiritual knowing and most authentic self. Please listen carefully to the following options. To discover how to fulfill your soul's purpose, press 1. To unlock infinite abundance in life, love, and career, press 2. To heal your mind, body, and spirit, press 3. To speak with your personal spirit guides, press 0. Please hold while we connect you to your highest timeline. Whenever I need guidance and I don't know where to turn, the very first thing I do is grab my oracle cards. Honestly, that's been my go-to practice since I was just 7 years old, and nothing has changed. I truly believe that having a deck you love is the first step to creating a clear line of communication with your spirit guides. Without one, it can feel nearly impossible to grow your intuition and receive the guidance that you need. That's why I created and published 2 of my very own oracle decks filled with channeled messages from spirit to give spiritual seekers like you tools to tune in, trust, and hear wisdom on demand. And now I want to give both of my decks away for free to one lucky winner. So here's how to enter. Simply go to zoegreco.com/giveaway. No purchase necessary. The giveaway runs from September 15th through September 22nd, and I'll be announcing the winner on September 23rd via email and over on Instagram. To boost your chances, make sure you're following me on Instagram, subscribe to the podcast, and sharing the giveaway with your friends. The more love you spread, the more entries you'll receive. I haven't done a giveaway like this since 2021, so don't miss your chance to win both decks. Head to zoegreco.com/giveaway to enter today. Hello, Divine Darlings, and welcome back to the Higher Self Hotline. I'm your host, Zoey Greco. Thank you so much for joining me today. And today, I have a guest that I know for a fact you are going to love. And in fact, maybe some of you, in fact, I know some of you actually started listening to this podcast because you were so in love with our guest today. Today, we've got Taylor Paige. Taylor is an internationally sought after angelic intuitive, an evidential medium, and an astrologer. Known for her grounded wisdom and radiant connection to the spirit realm, Taylor has helped thousands of souls around the world deepen their intuition, heal spiritual wounds, and reconnect with their divine path. Whether she's guiding one-on-one sessions, leading workshops on angelic connection and soulmate attraction, or sharing insights on her top-ranked podcast, Magic Hour with Taylor Paige, her work is rooted in helping others return to their highest self. With a waitlist in the thousands and a heart devoted to service, Taylor's mission is to make the unseen feel sacred, accessible, and real. And that she does. Taylor, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to hang with you today.
You know, when I was on Magic Hour, I feel like anytime that you would share something about yourself, I was like, oh, me too. Like, oh, me too. And I feel like there's just this kind of like innate sort of visceral resonance between the two of us, just like two girlies doing the damn thing and doing it differently, obviously, but also doing it with the same like mission and heart. And I think it's really important to share spaces collaboratively with other practitioners. And I've had like intuitives come on the show and be like, I'm shocked you had me on. And I'm like, we're on the same mission. We're on the same team. So I'm so excited to have you here. And I would love if you could start by sharing with listeners a little bit about what brought you to this place today, like how you found yourself in this current expression of your purpose.
Yes. And I couldn't agree more with so many synchronicities between our path. And also there's room for everyone in this space. It's kind of, I heard, Jennifer Weigel say, if there can be a CVS and a Rite Aid on every corner, why can't there also be a psychic medium on every corner too? It's like we need more ethical people in this space, not less. And I think amplifying people who are in their power and in their evidence and in their service and in their gift is a good thing, not something that we need to be running from or hiding. There's absolutely no scarcity at all. Yeah. So what brought me to this path? It's funny because I wanted to be a sitcom writer. I did not.
Really?
This was not the original path that I sought out to be on. And like many people, I truly believe that working through the fear of this work is a prerequisite in a lot of cases, whether it's fear of judgment, fear of the actual connection, fear of, disappointing a client, whatever the fear shows up as, there's always a feeling the fear and doing it anyway as a reclamation to this path. And so like many, I started off with very fearful experiences. I would have precognitive dreams of when family members were going to pass. I could sense physical illnesses in the people around me. I felt spirit people in my bedroom and of course projected fear onto that, which when that happens, it's very interesting because the message that I get is as soon as they give you their message, it can stop. But we run from it. We get scared. We project images that we've seen in the media about these types of things. So I just lived a very fearful existence, and I kind of hit a spiritual rock bottom in my life because I basically put a blindfold over my third eye because if it wasn't quote unquote normal, I didn't want to know about it because I was so scared. And I ended up in the wrong relationship, the wrong job. I was sick. I was in such a dark place in my life because by cutting out what I perceived as bad, which I truly don't believe there's anything bad or negative. People have different beliefs about that. By cutting that out, I was also cutting out the intuition, the angels, the connection to my higher self. And I was just completely lost. And I hit this rock bottom moment in my life where I left a 4.5, almost 5-year abusive relationship. And I didn't even recognize myself anymore. And I had to leave at 3:00 in the morning. And I was at this hotel and it was Halloween. And I was looking at myself. Yes. And I was looking at myself in the mirror and the light had gone out of my eyes and I looked so broken and I didn't recognize myself anymore. And I made a promise to myself in that moment, never again. And I actually started wearing a promise ring to my higher self after that and was like, I promise to be in relationship with you for the rest of my life. I will never leave you again. And from that moment, I started opening up intuitively. And I think we might have spoken about this a little bit when you came on Magic Hour, but I also came from a very academic background and I was very afraid of judgment and what people would think about me. And I had everybody around me going to these Ivy League schools and becoming lawyers and doctors and things in just the materialist paradigm. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is part of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I got the clear message. I was living in a little studio apartment. I was waitressing while I was trying to write my comedy scripts. And I got this message, sell the furniture in your studio and create a reading room. So literally it was just my bed. And then I sold my couch and my end table and made a little nook. And I put on Facebook that for 1 full year, I would give free angel readings to anybody who wanted one. And I call it my spiritual internship year. And so many people wanted one. I was not expecting that, but I had a great community at the restaurant I worked at. I had a great community in the comedy world. I feel very fortunate to have been in Los Angeles where there's a very spiritual consciousness and everybody was curious. And as soon as you say free readings, it's say less. There was a line out the door. So I started reading for friends. And then friends of friends. And I started realizing there is more to this than I'm giving myself credit for. And it just sort of developed from there. I think my first year after that, I charged $30 for 45-minute readings. I took it very slow and my prices reflected my experience level. And it just sort of evolved. And eventually I got asked to be the reader at the baby shower of some someone named Lacey Phillips who created To Be Magnetic, which is a really, famous manifestation thing. I ended up giving angel readings to like everybody at her party. She bought angel readings for all of her coaches. And eventually I got invited on the Expanded podcast. And that's when my career completely took off. That's when my wait list took off. And so I wouldn't have been ready for it before that. And it just sort of it's funny because when I was doing acting and comedy writing, it was like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, closed door after closed door after closed door. And I was so frustrated. And then this path, as they say in the writer's world, like the story wrote itself. I didn't really have to try. I wasn't trying to like go down this path. I just kind of surrendered to it. And it has been more beautiful than I could have planned for myself.
Every piece along the way, there was so much resonance, of course, for me. Just the idea of you being a little person and trying to navigate big visions and big feelings. And I actually remember when I was very small, the exact experiences of like the fear of sensing something, even though I also don't believe in like darkness or demonic energy. Like that's something that I'm very, very outspoken and passionate about.
Me too.
Think there's a lot of intentional misinformation that is shared to victimize people and then to take advantage of them financially in this industry. And I feel like that's a conversation we could have all on its own. Like there's so much to that.
Yeah.
That, the resonance of like starting in your little apartment and shifting your price points. Like I can remember the very low dollar readings I was doing for a very long time until energetically I felt like I needed to honor my worth differently and my time and my energy and just change that exchange. But, what you're describing of getting invited to do these readings and then having this sort of take off for you, I think that is something that so many people want and hope for. And it's such beautiful and strong evidence of alignment. And I also want to just remind anyone listening out there that if your journey isn't quite as smooth, it doesn't mean you're out of alignment. It just means that your angelic helper maybe hasn't arrived yet. Because it sounds like Lacey was really like an angelic support to you, someone that kind of came in and like opened a path, opened a doorway that you were ready to walk through when you were ready to walk through it. And it just kind of appeared right on time. So I think there's so much beauty in what your journey has looked like. And all along the way, these nuggets of truth and wisdom that arose for you are so valuable and so important. And also I think the idea that your path was not the one that you designed for yourself. I resonate with that strongly. I thought I was going to be a journalist. Like I thought I was going to be like a sociologist. I had so many other plans for myself. And I think we can both agree that this work is very sociological in a lot of ways. There's so much that we see and perceive in people that maybe, could be almost perceived as like a little bit of a case study. But I have so many questions for you that as a fellow intuitive, I'm really curious about your sort of vision and perspective on. And I think that there will be, of course, a lot of resonance, but I still think that there is unique medicine in each of us. And so I'm really excited to share your unique medicine today with listeners and dive into some of these questions. So are you feeling ready to answer?
Yes. And before we get into them, I just want to say my true earth angel is Jessica Gill, who's the co-host. She's like works very closely with Lacey, but she and I were friends before she even got that job, which led to me even getting the job as the reader. But what I want to say too about what you said about like people whose path might not be as smooth or this or that, two things is one, I think really do this for the love of it. Because for me, it was never about fame or recognition or a long wait list. It genuinely was about my mission statement of connection and service. And I think like when I was going down this path 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and just starting out, there wasn't a blueprint to compare myself to, whereas people have that now. So my ego was not involved. It was beyond my wildest dreams what this might turn into because this wasn't as popular. And so I think for people today, they might fall into the pitfall of trying to recreate a blueprint of somebody they look up to when that's not really what's needed right now. Their unique medicine, their unique offering, the fusion of everything they love is what's needed. And they can compare themselves to other people and feel like, oh, I'm falling up short or I'm not supported. And that couldn't be less of the case. I think that part of the prerequisite of feeling the fear and doing it anyway is walking through the unknown. And it's like this, my business model, my path has been done. Yours hasn't. Maybe there will be elements of overlap, but there's just this important message I feel called to share, which is like, do it for the love, stay in service, not ego. And then everything will write itself, and it will be easy because you'll be in the love of doing it, no matter if you get recognition or not. I was so happy to be a waitress supporting myself while I did this on the side. Like, I was so happy to write long Instagram readings for 3 likes because those 3 likes meant the world to me that 3 people read it. So I think that is like a really important part to share. And I think there's also something I feel called to say, which is like, you might be getting more intuitive nudges about how to move forward that you're not listening to, or like you might feel called to do things that scare you and push you out of your comfort zone or make you a little vulnerable, or things that have never been done before. And where might you not be fully trusting that?
Oof. Thank you for saying that. And, this is something I actually see a lot with clients, especially because you and I are doing this work in a particular time in human history where, like, for instance, when we started doing this work a decade ago, podcasts were like, what is that? Like, the things that we're doing now didn't quite exist. And so many of the careers that we're witnessing be, hugely impactful in the world did not exist in their current iteration, or in some cases at all. And I feel like we are in a particular time in the collective awakening where people are being asked to do things that have never been done. And they are being asked to pave pathways and forge paths forward that no one has walked yet. And it's very intimidating to be the person that's at the front of that kind of like overgrowth of jungle with your machete, like carving your way through, not knowing what's on the other side of that, thick green, like cave that's kind of like set forward in front of you. And courage is so necessary. And I feel like courage comes from taking steps forward in fear. Like, we find the courage by taking the action. We don't find the courage in order to take the action, but the courage that we find from each step that we take prepares us more and more for the next. And I don't know about you, but for me personally, I have had to truly befriend fear. Like, I know at this point in my journey, when I am fearful, when I am afraid, I'm moving in the right direction. And my favorite quote, I talk about this all the time, it's by Pema Chodron. And she says, fear is a natural reaction of moving closer to the truth. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I think that when we're comfortable, we're not really growing, obviously. Like, we're not allowing ourselves to befriend fear, expand through the fear, and be made different by the experience of walking through that portal of facing the things that we find so daunting, when really, once we do it, we're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Yes, absolutely. And my definition of intuition is the sum of the times we've trusted ourselves. And trust requires unknown, faith through the darkness. If we wanted to know everything, we would have stayed in the spirit world, but we can't become, and I always say too, like, the best intuitives and mystics and oracles and seers are the ones that are comfortable not knowing, because it's only in the not knowing that our intuition has a chance to speak and our mind isn't creating stories and narratives that are speaking over it. Yeah. And so I think I loved what you said about bravery comes from taking action, not getting the bravery, then taking the action. And I think that that's so powerful. And I think that, our generation of people in like the 2016, 2017 era who kind of all started their businesses around the same time, that was needed for that time. And we were overcoming a lot of fear and unknowns. And now the world needs a new generation. And we can be so literal, like, spirit only works through me if I give readings, but spirit works through all of us through our own individual gifts, whether we're literally cutting hair or an interior designer. It's like spirit works through all of us, and we can no longer afford to not listen to our intuition.
Snaps for days, put that all on a t-shirt. I agree with every single ounce of that. And I think when we think about our intuition, to me, so first of all, your definition is phenomenal. I personally experience intuition as the voice of our higher self, which is like the most authentic piece of us. And like you're saying, intuition is not just for the mystics. It is not just for those of us who show up in service in this particular way. And intuition does not always lead you toward like a spiritual path. Sometimes intuition leads you toward where spirit needs you to be, which is, of course, inherently spiritual, but it doesn't necessarily look spiritual or doesn't feel overtly spiritual in the way that maybe what you and I are doing. But I really feel and believe that everyone that tunes in and everyone that listens or comes for a reading is just trying to move closer to that innate inner knowing. And they're seeking validation. They're seeking someone to say, it's okay to do what you want to do, not what you think you have to do. It's okay to do what you're feeling called from within to pursue versus the things that the noise outside of you is guiding you toward. And the idea of growing our courage by acting on each of those intuitive impulses along the way is so important. And I think for me personally, like, I haven't really shared this. This is the first time I'm going to talk about this, but like, it's kind of guiding me away from the work that I've been doing the way that I've been doing it. My own intuition is guiding me in a different direction that is, it's something that I previously had never even dreamed of. But when we're quiet enough, our intuition allows us to see visions that we were too fearful to welcome before. So kind of like you were saying, when we're little and we see spirits or we sense energy and we're like, no, I don't want to talk to you, I'm afraid. And we kind of scurry off and scurry away. We do the same thing with our own internal messages. We do the same thing with our own internal wisdom. And for me personally as well, like in this work, I used to feel in my early 20s, like I looked younger than I was. I wanted to be taken seriously. And I felt like I had to know all the answers. I felt like I had to be able to answer every question. And now my work really looks like supporting people in dancing in the uncertainty and meeting themselves in the present. I'm not as into like this work being all about the future, like what's going to happen ahead of time. I really think working with intuition in the present moment is where we have the most impactful energy, because it doesn't make sense to turn our back to the present, to shake our fist at the past. And all we're doing is being mad at versions of ourselves or others who were doing the best they could with what they had, or to vice versa, turn our back to the present in favor of a future and a self that we hope to be and a future we hope to live in, because you can only access that reality by truly embodying the present moment. So I'm actually curious how you feel about that. I'd love to hear your response to kind of that share.
Well, another overlap between the two of us is that I don't predict the future in my readings, and I don't attract the type of clients to me that even find that information useful. It's not, my client base and the people that find my work are the people who are doing the work on themselves, very self-aware, and want to connect with their highest timeline here and now and find the tools to do that. And so if anything, and that's like a very angelic frequency too, because they very much honor free will. And sometimes future information comes up and I'll share it when it does, but I always share it with the asterisk of if nothing changes. And mediumship happens in the present moment. Intuition happens in the present moment. You have to be so present and listening and attuned. You can't be thinking about the past or what's to come. Like, the magic exists in the present. So why would the information exist in the future? And it's interesting too, because even as an astrologer, like, people like to use astrology to try to predict the future. And I think that unless we were living on an island away from the world and didn't know anything, it's impossible to accurately predict the future for people, individuals, or society that we are a part of, because our mind automatically comes in with what we want to be true, what the projection is. Sometimes future information will come through, and I find that if I'm surprised by it, it's usually accurate. But I think that's why so many astrologers kind of like got the election wrong, and everybody was seeing what they wanted to see. And I think that was a big collective lesson for us, that like, I think that the vibe of trying to predict the future is more in alignment with control and fear. And I think that's what doesn't resonate with me, because it's like, how does hearing about that help you? It takes away your power. It's saying that's what's just going to happen. But I think getting the tools, the clarity, the healing, and the guidance in the present moment to help create your highest future. I believe we create the future right here and right now, and getting the clarity to help us create our highest future. I think that's the most empowered choice we can make. And I'm very wary of people who only focus on future predictions, because that to me seems, I'm not trying to judge, but it just seems like an outgrown spiritual consciousness. I think we've evolved past that a little bit.
I couldn't agree more with you. And it's interesting. I had a client session just yesterday with a client who we've been working on energetically preparing her for partnership. Like that's really what she was working on calling in. And she finally met someone and she was really excited about it. And she came to session and she was like, she was afraid. So she first of all was like, I thought about rescheduling the session. And she specifically set a boundary with me. And she said, I don't want to know if this is my person. Don't tell me if this is my person. And I sat with her for a second and I said, I really want you to know that you don't have to be afraid to come. Like, I'm not going to take that. I'm not here to take anything away from you. Like, if that relationship is for you, we'll find out as it unfolds. But it's not for me to predict or tell you whether this person is for you or not, because the uncertainty that you're sitting in, the desire to protect this, like this is just fear speaking. Like this is just fear. And I want you to know you don't have to be afraid in this space. That's not what this is for. And that's not what it's about. Now, what we get to focus on is supporting you in being your highest and best self inside a partnership, not just preparing for partnership, meeting you and your fears and your doubts and your concerns and your excitements and your joys along the way, creating the relationship as you go, not deciding at the very beginning if you get to keep it or not. And it really sat with me in that moment. And it felt like a pivotal moment for me and like as a practitioner, but also for that client to realize we walked through a portal together from one state of our work into another. And it was just so beautiful and exciting to witness and experience. And I couldn't agree more that we do create the future from the present. And so really, I'm actually curious about this for you. For me, my intuition kind of shows up in a way where I feel that I have the ability to access the infinite possibilities available and sort of tap into the path that is most likely, and also the path that is in the highest alignment or like for the greatest good. And I kind of am able to tell people, okay, the path you're walking now takes you here. Is that where you want to go? And there's this voice, this part of you that's trying to do something else and it's trying to take you here. Is that where you want to go? And once we determine that path, then we get to decide, how do we walk it? How do we get there? So what does that show up like for you?
Yeah, well, I think, when we're in service to our clients, we can't give them future messages that they aren't the version of self yet to understand. And their soul came here to experience this journey. So obviously there are things that client has to go through with that partner that's going to turn her into the version of self that would understand the future information. It's like skipping to the last chapter of the book. You wouldn't understand that. You don't know the characters. You haven't seen the growth journey. And so I think that's a really important part of ethics as a reader too, is like really empowering our clients to, because I think sometimes like future predictions can become egoic about being right as the reader instead of the messages that's actually most helpful for the client. And so for me, how when I feel, because I'm extremely clairsentient, that is my main psychic sense. And I can feel where the energy wants to flow and I can feel where the energy is stuck and stagnant. And how I phrase future information that comes through is, if it gets to this point where you are experiencing XYZ and this person isn't meeting their free will call to show up, because guess what? I've tuned in and I've seen this is not the partnership for them. They're going to divorce. Like I see that. But it's not of the highest good to say that to somebody who is vulnerable and open and afraid. What is of the highest good is to tune in and be like, okay, I'm feeling this type of pattern. I'm feeling this type of communication style. I'm feeling this type of scarcity consciousness in yourself. Like, let's explore that. And then I say, if you get to a place in the relationship or the marriage where this is happening, these feelings are coming up, this is the behavior, and they will not meet the free will call to change with you, then this is for the highest good for how to move forward. And I focus on empowered action steps. And I think that's one of the best ways to kind of work with future information, in my opinion.
I, again, couldn't agree more. There are times when I connect with a client and I can feel immediately that like the relationship or the position or the location, whatever it is that is feeling restrictive to them, they already know that on some level because they're also telling me that in some way, in a way that I can perceive it, whether it's energetically or emotionally or quite literally. If they're saying like, I hate my job, but they don't want to quit yet or they don't want to leave. I sometimes for 5 years in advance, I'll know something and then the moment finally arrives. And I do find that, and this is perhaps a reflection of like the work I've done or the clients I've had in the past, but sometimes I find that people sort of they feel frustration, not with me, but with spirit for like letting them live the story, like go through the book rather than protecting them or preventing them from something that they experience as like negative or bad. And I have definitely had clients be like, I'm mad at spirit. I'm angry that like I had to go through this. And I'm curious if you've ever experienced that, but also not yourself, but if you've ever experienced that in clients and how you sort of meet those emotions. Cause I know how I meet those emotions, but I'm so curious to know how you sit with someone in that experience.
Yeah. Well, I will say I've had this experience professionally and personally. I think it's a part of our intuitive development journey is detangling what's us and what's actually a message. And we can feel really let down by our angels when we're attached to outcomes. We can feel really let down. And so I had this experience where I was so upset at my angels because I find that this happens a lot in love life where we're so like nervous system dysregulated and we want a sign that this person is going to be the one. And we're like, we saw it. And then the most common intuitive development flaw that I see is projecting meanings onto signs that don't exist, but are attachment to outcomes that we want to exist when self-divination all exists inward. It's like, you don't need a butterfly to tell you this is your soulmate. You need to do deep soul digging inside of yourself. And so I had this experience where I like thought this person was the one for me. And I was so upset because we broke up and I was so mad at my angels. And I was in Salem, Massachusetts, and I was stomping around and I was like, angels, like, you're not really with me and you're not helping me. And how could this happen? And they said, how could you? Two angels. And, and basically they said, we are always with you. You're not always with us. And that was the moment that everything changed for me because our intuition is always there and it's always right. And by the way, following our intuition doesn't absolve us of the human experience. It just makes it a more graceful, fluid, empowered experience. But our soul is going to learn what we came here to learn. So us going through the book, like, and being mad at our angels for that, first of all, isn't really fair. But our intuition is always inside of us. Our angels are always with us. We are not always with them. How many times do we play judge and jury over our higher truth and our knowing? How many times do we ignore the red flags because they're inconvenient to the outcomes we're attached to? And that's a huge part. It's like, intuitive development goes hand in hand with personal growth and personal power and trusting ourselves. And so I think our angels never really betray us. It's just how open to radical honesty are you with yourself and how much empty space are you actually making to listen instead of trying to control and force?
I want to worship at the altar of those words. Like, yes, 100%. And for me personally, and I'm almost like afraid to say this because I don't want it to sound like braggadocious, but that's just the people pleaser in me. I personally have not had that moment with my angels where I'm like, what the hell? Like, why? There's this thing inside of me that just always believes in the goodness of my life and like that I am loved and guided even when I have hardship or difficult experiences. And I welcome every difficult moment or like moment of suffering I've ever lived because it has expanded me. And that is part of what I came here to do, is to experience humanity in its fullest form in every shade of that spectrum, which does include difficulty and suffering and also includes joy and fulfillment and like rapture. You know, it includes all of those wonderful things. But the dichotomy and the duality and the juxtaposition of those experiences, each needs the other. Suffering requires joy and joy requires suffering. And they are partners in humanity. So I haven't personally like shaken my fist. I've shaken my fist at people and been like, why? Why did you choose to do that? Like, why did you use your human free will to hurt me? But I've also, shaken my fist at myself and said, why did I use my human free will to hurt others? Like, why did I use my, my ability to choose? Why did I utilize my choice to choose harm? But again, causing harm is also a part of the human experience. And when we can find meaning in all of those moments and understand that they paint the full picture and they tell the story of who we are and it's how we become who we already are, is to have those experiences. That's when I think we experience like levity and peace and serenity in the journey. To me, that is flow. Flow isn't just everything working out in my favor and like feeling good all the time. Flow is having what I describe as canonical events. Like there's certain things where I'm like, oh fuck, I'm about to have a canonical event. Like, I'm about to have a friend breakup that changes my story. Like I'm about to have, when I met my husband, I was like, oh shit, you're my husband? Like, where you been, dog? Like it's been too long. Like where you been? So these moments of like canonical experience, I think make our story what it's meant to be. And I think the way that you're describing, that recognition and embracing of that is so spot on. And I have to just say, like you are so full of integrity and it is so potent. Like your integrity and your awareness and your honesty are so like earth shaking that it really is no wonder to me that you are just kind of like, to me, I experience you as like this force, like you're a force that's moving through like the spiritual world. And I got my eye on you, like I'm seeing you. And I really believe it is because, as you described, you stay so strongly in service. And so I'm curious as a practitioner, because these aren't actually the questions I intended to ask you, but obviously spirit directs our conversations. There are so many people that are listening that I think want to do this work and are approaching it with ego, not intentionally, but because it's what they know, or it's the only way they know how to function. And so I'm curious how you have found a way to sidestep your ego, or how have you learned to work with her or to combat her, or like, what is your relationship to your ego and how do you allow her or teach her to sit on the side as you remain focused on service?
I love this question. And I think the ego has a lot of valuable information for us. I don't demonize or judge my ego. I observe where a need is not being met in myself. And so my ego swoops in to save the day. And when ego comes in, I always say the ego is the bodyguard for the soul. And it's just gotten so out of balance in this society. But the ego has a function, and every single part of ourselves is perfectly designed. So instead of trying to quiet my ego or love and light or mantra over my ego, I listen to her. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel seen. I don't feel celebrated. I don't feel like my hard work is being recognized. And what I find with people who can sometimes tip into ego instead of service is that on some level, a core need of their soul and their inner child isn't being met. And if it's interesting too, because I see this all the time in my readings where people want something so much in their life, like a tangible outcome that has nothing to do with that thing. It's the version of self or the need that they think will be met when they have that thing. And I think if we can get really honest about ourselves, with ourselves about what needs are not being met, our ego can take a step back and won't feel like it has to protect us so hard anymore.
I'm crying. First of all, I just want to say I'm PMSing so hard, and I told everyone.
Me too. I'm gonna start any day.
I am crying all the time. Like, my license plate crybaby is so true. First of all, the way that you speak about ego is exactly the way that I speak about ego, and I'm crying because it just wants compassion. Like,
yeah,
it just wants compassion, and I think when ego comes up, as you're saying, like, she is such a messenger. And I think our egos are also very courageous because it's the part of us that feels hard things like envy or anger or, like the feelings that we are too fearful to feel. Our ego feels them for us and then tries to let us know, I don't feel good. Like something's hurting me. And the demonizing, like, there's like that thing, I'm sure you've seen it, where like the ego is not your amigo. I'm like, actually, she's kind of bestie. Like, she's kind of ride or die. Like, she really does so much for us. So I'm curious, with that awareness, can you share a little bit specifically about how you work with your ego compassionately or softly? Like, what are some of the practices that you use to tap into here? Because I agree with you. I think our ego is just as important to listen to as our intuition, because the ego is like the voice of the human self and the intuition is the voice of like the higher self. So in my perception. So I'm curious, like, how do you make space? What are your practices to like hear her, receive her? And then how do you kind of show your ego, hey, I'm on it. Like, you don't have to be so vigilant. It's going to be okay. I'm on it. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I think first of all, every part of us is perfectly designed, like I said before. And I think saying the ego is not our amigo is so unkind. It gives the similar kind of energy of like being at war with our own bodies, which every part of our body is just trying to keep us alive and protect us. It's like, you can't love yourself if you don't love every part of yourself and have grace with every part of yourself. And so, I think I notice when I'm doing something that, like, so I believe emotions are messengers. The ego is a messenger. Nervous system dysregulation is a messenger. It's like everything is a messenger. And once you get the message, the messenger can stop. So for me, when I notice like, I'm kind of acting in a way that I know deep down feels a little icky and not authentic to myself, I feel my ego starting to come in. Like, I just had an experience where I was like kind of over explaining my business anytime I was with my husband's side of like the world and at these like conventions with these businessmen who were kind of treating me like I just have some small little hobby and my husband is like the hot shot, which is fine. My husband is a hot shot, but I felt my ego coming up and I was like, actually, like, this is how many downloads on my podcast I have and this is my waiting list. But deep down, I was like, that's not really me either. That's not the point. And I could feel my ego was trying to protect me. And so one of the first things about embracing our ego with a messenger is not running from shame. Because once we identify what the ego has been doing to protect us, it's natural for shame to come up. And a message that I get so strongly is that this is a form of ancestral healing, feeling shame. Like, shame will not derail us like it did to our ancestors. And that's a step closer to us in our power and our ultimate truth. And so I sit with the shame and I'm like, that didn't feel good. That didn't feel authentic. I don't like the version of self I was in that when my ego came out holding a shield. And so then I kind of I feel into it and I'm just like, okay, like, where does this shame live in my body? Where is it? Is it in my throat? Is it in my stomach? Is it on my heart? Where is it? And I just start to see like, okay, if I was bragging about myself, then where's a need not being met? And it was that I didn't feel seen, that I pour my heart, my whole life essence into my work, and it felt dismissed and diminished and sort of just like looked down upon, and that triggered my ego to be seen. But it wasn't, first of all, usually when we act from our ego, it's not going to have the results that we want it to. It's not like they saw me. It's just that it's up to us to meet those needs for ourselves. So that's where I was like, okay, I see me. I'm the only validation I need. I have my own back. And I've never engaged in that pattern again because I got the message. And now I don't even feel the need to act like that in those situations. My ego's not holding the shield because I got the message.
It really is in that deep listening that I think we find answers and solutions and peace, whether it's deep listening to our ego, deep listening to our intuition, deep listening to others, like those that we're in relationship with or those that we're in, working partnership with. Like the act of deeply listening without deciding what the outcome should or needs to be is really, in my opinion, like the main path toward peace, whatever peace looks like or whatever success looks like. Just liberation from shame or lack of fulfillment or whatever it is that is like plaguing you in that moment. And then it is that deep listening. And I think people want to believe that it's more complicated, that it can't be just as simple as like, oh, I'm having feelings that I should just sit with and allow myself to feel and not force myself to run from. So I'm curious for you, when you experience resistance, whether it's in yourself or with clients, because it sounds like you have done a really good job of learning to like master that within yourself. But I mean, we're all human. We all have moments. Like when you experience resistance to that willingness, how do you meet your resistance?
Yeah. I think nowadays I don't have as much resistance. It's actually like once you start getting into the almost addiction of understanding yourself more, when discomfort arises, I welcome it. I don't run away from it. I run towards it because I know there's a deeper level of liberation for my soul behind it. And so I see this image of like our triggers, our tough relationships, our tough living situations, our tough jobs, our tough dynamics. All of those forces are holding a key to another layer of our shackles. And when we go towards them and we take the key from them, instead of feeling like they're against us, it's for us to become more liberated, to let go of the key, to get the key and let go of a layer of our shackles, to become lighter. And that's really helped me to see it as one of the ultimate gifts I can give myself. And then the same trigger, the same lesson will come again, but it's not holding the key for you anymore because you took it back and you'll engage with it in a completely different way.
Oh, I love that. It's like when we're trying to reach for something, we're shackled, so it remains out of reach. But once we allow that key to come in and sort of unlock those chains off of us, suddenly it's so much easier. Like it's almost effortless to reach that thing right in front of us, whether it's self-understanding or self-actualization or, understanding of others or a relationship or dream job or whatever it is that we're reaching for. Because I do believe that there is like meaning in relationships with others or standing in your purpose. Like I think that those things are fulfilling. And I see a lot of spaces in the spiritual world. So this is actually taking me into another question where we're almost taught to like abstain from desire because that somehow like invalidates that we're working on ourselves or like having our experiences. But for me, my relationship has been my greatest classroom, and the place where I've learned to love myself the most is in my relationship. Or, without the experience of my purpose, yes, I'm focused on service, of course, but also it's for me. I do it because I love to do this. And I don't think it's like shameful to want things, but I think we feel shame when we reach for something and we struggle to reach it or we struggle to achieve it. Like this idea of trying in front of others and not, obtaining or achieving is really hard. And people are really struggling with that experience right now.
Yeah. I think in that case, that sounds like another thing that the ego is showing us where a need is not being met. And there's deep information for us there. And I think desire is amazing. I think attachment to how it has to look or come about is where we can become limited or judgmental or just hold ourselves back.
Would you say that you see desire as a tool of intuition?
Absolutely. I see hunger for knowledge as a tool for intuition. I see desire, but I think sometimes so people say like, okay, well, like why am I not manifesting? Why am I not getting what I want? And I like to say, any wish you make from your heart, you get. Any manifestation wish from your head and your ego, it's like some of the layers of energy are aligned and some aren't. So what your heart wishes for is always the truth and always what you'll get. So sometimes it's like, and it goes back to that idea of like attachment to outcomes, because we think this is what I'll feel when I get this thing, or this is the version of self I'll be when I get this thing. So say your heart is asking for, I don't know, like freedom maybe. And so we think I have to make this level of money to get freedom. Or then our mind says, okay, I hear you, heart. We want freedom. Let me attach a story, which is the only way that I'm going to start to look to get it. And that's where we lose connection with flow and the path and where our intuition is leading us. And that's where the ego starts to take over to try to meet that need.
Wow. Honestly, I feel like we need to make merch out of everything you've said today. Like, I want this to be reminders that people can wear and look like. There's so much wisdom and integrity, again, in what you bring forward and into the world. And one of my last questions for you, because I know we're heading toward the end of our time together, which is so sad. We're going to have you back for more. I know. That's what happens when you're having fun.
Yeah.
You know, when I was asking you about resistance, for me, I've discovered that my quickest way to challenge my resistance is by speaking to the people that I love. And whether that is the community that I've built inside my business, like this past year, I tore down my entire team, built it all back up completely new. And now I have the freedom to like cry on business calls or like share my deeper emotions. Like having a business is a very spiritual experience and a very emotional experience, a very personal experience. And so having space for emotion is important. So whether it's been in my business or my personal life, when I have resistance, it shows up for me in like a desire to want to hide. So the best way to overcome that is to share and to become vulnerable and to become more open, more expressed. And I've built a life for myself in which I am surrounded by people who I can be expressive with, at least most of them. And I know who those people are in my life. And I'm curious for you, how building community has been necessary and important for you, and sort of how you have built community for yourself, if you've built community for yourself, and like how you were able to achieve that. Because I think that there's a loneliness in awakening and the spiritual path that I feel like the path has been very individualistic to this point, and now we're kind of being held responsible for something else, something for like more community. So I'm curious how you've been able to achieve or create community or support in your life, and how you also are seeing that beginning to show up for you potentially in your work.
Yeah, I think, as a Scorpio sun, Aries rising, I've gone like on a lot of solo missions in this life. And I've felt very much like a solitary practitioner in this space for a long time. And for most of my trajectory in this space, I was the only one doing this work in my community, in my family. And so I would be like the friendly next door witch that's like, people are calling me about their dreams. And I think I've been very fortunate again to be in a city and environment that's very open to this. But I always say like that kind of instinct to like hide our spiritual gifts or hide our truth, especially in this work. When we act from that witch wound place, we attract our oppressor. And when we're radically open and honest about our interests, our spirituality, and everything like that, we attract our soul family. And so I see it all the time where people start this spiritual path and they kind of hide it. And then they inevitably outgrow their relationship. They outgrow their friendships, because it's like it happens really quickly, where almost overnight everything changes and what you care about is different. And your whole worldview is shaped when you start to go down this path. And sometimes people just don't grow in the same direction. They have that free will choice to do that. So for me, I am like a lone wolf type of energy. I'm a complete introvert. I recharge by myself. But I think one of the shadow sides of Pluto in Aquarius is showing us right now that like we can't substitute technology and social media as community. And so it's been very important for me to create my coven. Our coven's name is Goddess GPT because I don't believe tuning into Chat GPT. I think the goddess inside has all the answers that Chat GPT could give us. And so having my coven in real life has been so powerful because I am so used to also being the practitioner all the time that it's nice to be in a space where I can be held with my own things. And as a practitioner in this space, I get very used to never talking about myself or my own things and sort of always focusing on other people's. And that has been something I've had to work on because it's a way that that's like almost where my resistance comes. I just dive into work so I don't have to think about my own discomfort. And so I think community is really important. I think female friendships are so important. Having a group of people around you that support you and listen without judgment and radical honesty and reflect things back to you is so important. So yeah, community is super important. And that's actually been a really beautiful part of Magic Hour podcast is that I was always like the only one in my orbit doing this work. And now I get to have these conversations with people like you on the podcast. And I'm meeting other aligned spiritual entrepreneurs and visionaries and thinkers. And that's been a really beautiful thing too. And I found that everybody at the top of their game, it's like a surefire sign that they're going to support other people doing ethical work too.
Absolutely. I resonate so much with what you said about being so much in service that you almost struggle to come back to ways to express yourself. And listeners of the podcast have heard me say this for years, like I'm working on my vulnerability. Like I want to share more of myself with you. And that is, like I've avoided that lesson as long as I can. Like I am deep, deep, deep in it right now of like healing the visibility wound and like learning that it is safe to be consumed or like witnessed or seen. And I'm still working through it and I'm choosing to work through it in front of people because like what better way to challenge visibility than doing it imperfectly in front of others. So I resonate with that so deeply. But I also think what you said about having your coven is really, really important and something that I want to kind of highlight for listeners because although you identify as a lone wolf, we're not on the planet alone. So we're meant to, engage with others and receive from others and give to others. And for someone like yourself, to me, you're very, your heart is extremely open, but your energy is very discerning. And I think that's really beautiful and dichotomous and important. And as a practitioner, I think what you've described is really important as well, because clearly you're so emotionally accessible to people that you have the energetic exchange with. And in your personal world, in your personal life, it sounds like keeping your circle more tight or contained or intentional is really, really supportive to you. So I kind of wanted to just reflect that back and kind of like speak it to you almost so that others could hear it that way as well. Because I think sometimes for those of us that are feeling alone on our spiritual journeys, sometimes being alone isn't the worst place to be. Actually, sometimes being alone is where you do a lot of your best, most important work, and also having community and having, reflections, mirrors around you is also really important. And in your instance, it seems like you've chosen those mirrors and you're very intentional and discerning about how you share your energy. And I think that's really important.
Thank you. And I think like all of us have different lessons to learn. And for some people, it's very scary to be alone. And that's just never been my lesson. I am like a hermit. I'm a recluse. I think I have a Sagittarius stellium and I'm like, don't need me too much. Don't ask too much of me. I need ultimate freedom. Like I get icked out when people like demand my energy too much. So I think like my big three is just so much about like freedom and solitude. And yeah, so for me, it's actually the other way around where I have to learn to be more comfortable sharing sacred space with other people too.
Absolutely. Especially being a public figure, like I think there's a beauty in sharing your journey. And there's also pieces of our journey that are worth protecting and like worth keeping more intimate. And I see that balance really beautifully embodied in you. So I wanted to speak to that because I think you're doing it really, really well. And I think you're a great example of that.
Thank you, Zoe. I really feel like an open book. Like if it wasn't for the other people in my life, I would have no problem sharing everything, but it's just some things are not my story to share. So, I feel pretty much comfortable because I'm not trying to say I'm perfect and I never have. So I try to always share my lessons and what I'm currently working on in real time because we're all humans, like you said.
Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you about, you've teased this a little bit, that there's a mentorship offering in the works from you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do have a mentorship program that I'm currently working on. It's called Becoming the Oracle. And thank you. It's an 8-week program. I'm pouring everything I've learned in my almost 10 years of being a professional in the space. And it's intuitive development, but it's also the self-growth tools that are required for intuitive development and really tracking the evolution of stepping into the oracle. I'm only going to take 8 students at a time. And it's going to be just so powerful and so beautiful. I'm so excited about it. If you're interested in applying for it, you can email scheduling at angelsandamethyst.com. We'll put you on the email list, but it's going to start September, October. So it's perfect that this is coming out when it is. Because I'm just sort of fleshing it out, but it's going to be so exciting. And I've just been getting so many downloads about like exercises to do and building blocks. And I can't wait.
Well, I know that is going to be such an incredibly impactful offering. And it's coming from a place of such experience, expertise, but also authenticity. Like I see that so much in you. And so guys, definitely check out that program. And Taylor, where can everyone experience your gifts? Where can they connect with you? How can they work with you? I know you've got a long waiting list, but how can people experience your gifts firsthand?
Yeah, thank you so much for this, Zoe. And thank you for all of your kind words like peppered throughout this entire conversation. You're just the sweetest and you're such an earth angel yourself. I really appreciate you and your energy and what you put into the world. So you can find me at angelsandamethyst.com, and the and is spelled out. That's my Instagram handle as well, with underscores in between angels and amethyst. There's only one of me. I'm the blue check. I'll never DM you for a reading. It's sad that we have to say that these days, but I think people are becoming more. It's like for a while that took the world by storm, like 5 years ago. Now I think people kind of know like, okay, these are scammers. I do have a long waiting list, but there are opportunities to work with me sooner. I do a monthly gathering called Earth Angel Club once a month, where I go over the astrology of the zodiac season we're in. I do an energy reading for the group. I do a guided angelic meditation that's aligned with the current energy. And then I give ritual suggestions. And speaking of coven, that's like a great thing to do with your coven. And so if you do Earth Angel Club, you can skip the wait list and sit with me sooner. And if you're navigating an emergency, I have an emergency fee as well. So there are a couple ways to sit with me sooner. I also have workshops on angelic connection, healing the witch wound, and working with your angels to attract a soulmate connection. Code 333 gives you $33 off, and you can find them at angelsandamethyst.com. And the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive and Healing the Witch Wound are prerequisites for my mentorship container, because they're very important, and I'm going to build from that information, not go backwards for that.
Oh, I love, she's like, I'm not going backward. Bye. That is amazing. Well, there you have it, blessed babes. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. And I would love to take a moment to send this week's subject, Miss Taylor Paige, some love, sweetness, and positivity as she continues to teach us how to embody the oracle and help us connect to our higher self. You know, that is what we're all about here on the Higher Self Hotline. If you're interested in being on the podcast, send an email to podcast@zoegreco.com. Connect with me on all socials at the Zoey Greco. And remember, look for the blue check. And of course, I want to conclude by reminding you that you are important, you matter, and you are perfect exactly as you are. I love you. Your spirit guides love you. Taylor Paige loves you, and the universe loves you. So until next time, keep answering the call of your higher self. Bye, friends.